Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. And we broadcast 2 hours. 2 hours daily. From high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. If you'd like to call in, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And today, you're going to have a backstory look at what it's like when two of your instructors are on the air. I'm sorry, off the air, on the phone. So Joey from Michigan's with us, and he and I are going to just chat. There's no plan. We're going to chat about whatever comes up on our minds. Things that we've seen, observations, conclusions we've drawn, maybe some advice and counsel. And this is what it's like when Joey and I are on the phone, when we're chatting, just privately off the air. Welcome, Joey.
Hey, good morning, Vince. How are you?
So, Joey, it's just you and me and, I don't know, our class. I'm delighted to hear your voice and chat with you this morning. I wanted to share something that happened yesterday. I was at Sam's Club in Springfield, Missouri. And my mom was there, and Mrs. Finelli, our son, and I. And I was looking at the chilled section that has grapes, and it had a lot of grapes, 3-pound containers of grapes. It had Scarlata, which is kind of a rosy red, black grapes, green grapes. And there was a woman next to me, nicely dressed, middle-aged woman, and she picked up some green grapes, and I picked up some rosy red Scarlata. And I went to the other side of this display where they had more grapes. And so I was looking at them, and I had the Scarlata in my hand, and I saw what she did. She went around to the other side as well, and she took her green grapes and just put them right in the middle of the red Scarlata grapes because she decided she wanted a different kind of grape. So she carelessly just put her grapes in the wrong place. And it's like going to Lowe's and going in the plumbing section and trying to find that PVC or CPVC fitting that you're looking for. And you can't find it because all of the bins seem to be disorganized. What they say on the front doesn't necessarily correspond to the items in the bin because I think the customers put them in the wrong place, or the employees don't know what goes where, or the employees put them in the wrong place. But they're in the wrong place a lot of the times. That's just one little piece of anecdotal evidence. Let me give you one more. So maybe 30, 40 feet away from the grapes is the coffee section. And there I see, 3 or 4 feet from the aisle, from the shelving, is a 3-pound bag of coffee just sitting on the floor. And I saw people pushing their carts around it, going near it, but not doing anything about it. And they just left it there. So I looked at it, figured out where it went, put it right back on the shelf in the right spot. But here's the question. The people who went around it didn't pick it up. The person who dropped it, these things just don't fall off the shelves. The person who dropped it didn't pick it up. And people just went around it. It's like those dead bodies in the street that, or people who are suffering, having, I don't know, chest pains in the street, and people just walk around them. It's a sad state of affairs. Joey, do you have a response to that?
Well, is that where our morale as people have come to? Is that what this country has produced for people? I mean, I'd like to think it's not like that everywhere, but, we talk about Aldi's a lot. And Aldi's is a store, when you go into it, if you've got 3 or 4 items and somebody's got a grocery cart packed to the top, they always let you go ahead. Always. And 90% of the time. Most of the other supermarket stores, no, they'll fight you. But let's go back to that. Even now in Aldi's, I find people stop, despondent, not on the side, in the middle of the lanes. You can't hardly get around anybody. And I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times in the same row. So some special gift has occurred. Some, as Rick would want to put it, possibly an electrical charge from the outside coming in. Maybe it's cell phone poisoning. Maybe it's EMF. Maybe it's the antennas getting turned on. Your new phones are coming out, like the Androids with the Series 5 and the Series 7. And by Series 7, they're going to be able to program your DNA. Wow, what a marvelous idea. Is it the food we're eating? Is it your pH? Is it your lack of minerals and supplements from the toxic food that we've been fed? We've been talking about, occasionally me and Miles will talk, and we're talking about this GMO business has actually started in the mid to early 70s, even though it's not been really talked about. So we've been 20 years being changed in the program, not knowing. How does this all occur? I mean, where do these people come from? And if you think it's bad today, how do you think it's going to be? Because even your family members, close or distant relatives, friends, close or acquaintances, they're doing the same thing. How do you address that situation? And you still have, as I always say, running water, a place to stay, a comfortable, warm home. How's it going to be when you wake up and there's no electricity? Or your dollar is worth nothing? That story John told yesterday was priceless. If you took all the
John
debt,
Regan.
there's not enough assets to pay off the debt. How will you even comprehend such a number? How will you even wake up? And then you're talking about you have to weigh the money because there's too much of it to count. How do you? Yeah. My mind just gets overwhelmed. It's like it's going to blow a tire. It can't carry the load anymore when I hear numbers like that. I think about scenarios like that. So if you think it's bad today, just wait. There'll be plenty later. How do you address that?
It's really, really difficult. And then, as we travel through the stores, we see things. And let me tell you what I saw yesterday. I checked out did a self-checkout at Sam's Club. And Sam's Club used to have like 1 or 2 self-checkout stations. Now half of the stations are self-checkout, and the remaining half are with people helping you, with your purchases and checking you out, cashiers, if you will. And there in the front of the store was this spot where you can order, I guess, online or on the phone, tell them what you want, and they'll get everything ready for you. So you just show up and pay for it and get out the door with it faster. It was lined up with large flat screen televisions. And that was the dominant item that was positioned for people to pick up quickly. And I looked at that and I stopped, and there was a woman about 6 feet away from me, and I turned to her and I said, I could have had a TV. What was I thinking? I could have had a TV. And I said, but there's nothing to watch on TV. And she said, you're right. There's nothing to watch on TV. And we were kind of joking about it because people are buying televisions expecting to see something that probably, for the most part, isn't worth watching. At least that's how I see it. And I think of all these services that you can get and watch 100 channels, minimum, and go up to close to 300 channels. 300 channels of what? 300 channels of what?
Well, you talk about that TV, a widescreen TV, a 50-inch TV for $200 on Black Friday. If they're going to offer you a 50-inch brain-monitoring, brain-altering device for $200, is that in your best interest or theirs? Or how about that? It's a virtual reality mask. You put that on, and there's different programs you can put in. Can you imagine what kind of modifications? If they can alter elections through football games and televisions, I wonder what they could do. I wonder what they can do when you immerse your brain into this mask and you're getting personal attention, but that's what you can see. But how about what you can't see? How about the frequency when that's re-altering brain waves and brain chemistries? And what kind of impact, lasting impact, does that leave? I mean, those are things nobody even talks about. It's just stuff you or I or Miles or a handful of other people would want to talk about. But then the long and the short of this whole scenario, which way did he go and which end is up? Because it's happening faster and faster and faster. We were talking the other day how no matter what you start out doing, you always have to do 4 other things you didn't plan on because something broke you didn't even know. Like I was telling you the other day, I just had all new brakes put on a truck. The calipers went out. It wrecked the rotor. It wrecked the brake pads. It wrecked everything. And it's like, before you'd put that on, you wouldn't have to look at that for 5 or 6 years. But now you buy brand new parts and they're junk in 6 months. How's that going to work when you can't go to the parts store and get parts?
Really good point. Joey from Michigan's with us. And it's just 2 guys chatting the way we do off the air. Hey, Joey, when we come back, I'll tell you about what happened when I tried to open the hood of my car. That was a pretty interesting story. We'll be right back. Joey's with us, and we're just chatting about what we see and our observations. So, Joey, I was going to go to Springfield yesterday, and I did. But before that, I wanted to do a pre-trip check of our old Mercedes. I have a 2000 vintage E-Class 430. So it's an E430 Mercedes. I bought it used from one of our instructors. Very well taken care of. Always serviced at the dealership before I got it. At the Mercedes dealership. So anyway, I pulled the hood latch, and the hood popped up on the driver's side, but not on the passenger side. It has 2 hood latches. I pulled a little harder, and this thing isn't going to open. So here I am trying to check the car for a pre-trip check on Sunday, and I can't open the hood. And I thought, I'm probably going to be taking this on a longer trip really soon, and I got to get in this hood. So I asked my son to do a quick check on the internet and find out, I'm sure other people are having the same problem. So he looks, and so there's a post on a Mercedes forum, and it has a recommendation from Mercedes. And all you have to do to get your hood open, should this happen to you, is they recommend sawing through the grill.
Oh, please. It sounds like the government gave you those instructions.
Well, so see, because if you cut your grill open, you can then put your hand in there, reach way in the back there, and you can probably just flip this little lever that would be operated by this cable. And so he thought he had the same reaction you did, except he probably said, what an idiot would say that, because Mercedes, that's where you go to get the replacement grill after you cut yours apart, right? You go and say, hey, listen, I need a hood release cable and I need a new grill. So he decided that was ridiculous. So he got under the vehicle and he removed the air deflector. So this thing is this plastic piece that directs which way the air is going to go under the car for, less drag. And so stones and things don't get caught in the belts and so forth under the hood. And so he removed all the bolts and, small bolts that hold that together and reached up under there, and he was able to release the hood and then the hood latch. And so we got it open. Now, while he was doing that, I was on the radio. And then it looked like we couldn't get the hood, after he got that open, it looked like we couldn't get the hood to stay latched, because if you tapped on the hood latch with the hood, you could simulate locking it, and then you tap on it and it would open up. So now we're faced with, we could be traveling down the road at 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the hood opens up. That's not a good scenario. So ultimately, we patched it and got it together so we could, operate the vehicle. And I went to eBay and I looked at these hood release cables for the 2000 vintage E-Class. And there's a guy that sold a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them. And then there's maybe 15 different people selling these cables, brand new. This is obviously a problem, right? And so as I ordered that, and we're putting the car back together so we could use it, and I noticed that there are 2 bolts that hold each of the hood latches in place. One on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. And I think that's wonderful that there's 2 of them. In case one fails, maybe the other one will hold the hood down somewhat, while you're traveling. But I noticed that one of them only had 1 bolt holding it in. The other one had 2. Someone broke off the bolt that was holding one of the hood latches in place. The vehicle's only serviced by Mercedes. How is it possible that if Mercedes opens and closes the hood, that they didn't see that? How is that possible? And that brings me to carelessness. Carelessness. It's everywhere everywhere I look, there's carelessness. Joey, let's talk about that when we get back. Joey's with us. So, Joey, carelessness. I see it everywhere I go. Your thoughts?
Let's talk about carelessness. Whether it's that Mercedes tech, whether it's the government, whether it's you or I. You're given information every day. What do you do with that information? I know you and I occasionally talk, and you talk about the expos, you continue the show because there's so many hours in a day, and you're losing more and more of those hours. And I want to thank you for doing the show and for the expos because of the people I've met. But if I was like 90% of the other people, I would have been careless and not taken advantage of that. Every time you have a guest or a discussion, every time you ask someone if they've got a better idea to build a better mousetrap, well, that's carelessness on their part when they don't call in. They don't say, hey, I built a rocket stove. Hey, I made a concrete for a rocket stove. Hey, I came up with this thing. I did this. You know what? I've been working on my own form of energy or my energy storage systems. That's carelessness on a personal level. And what these people don't understand is that you won't be here forever to give this opportunity to open this airtime for people to have these discussions and or to contact you talk to you, and if they don't want to get on the radio and talk about their idea, they could at least share it. You'd be more than happy to put it in writing out there. But that's another form of carelessness, or just basically not preparing for an economic collapse that no matter how you add it up, it all comes up to the same equation. There's no way you can drive that tire that far with no air in it and think when you get to where you're going, you're going to be able to put air in it. That's a good description of carelessness, you think?
Yeah. Yeah. There are just too many people who don't care to share some of the things that they've learned with others. And that's what this broadcast classroom is all about. It literally is about sharing what we've learned, the solutions that we think apply to that, and the reasons why we think it's happened, and the reasons why we think our solutions are viable. That's what we do. That's literally what we've been doing going on 6 years. And, you know, I really don't know how long this broadcast classroom is going to be viable because of the lack of sharing that I've seen. Now, we've got some excellent instructors, no question about it. But we're looking for others who, you know, have been students. We want them to rise up and help train others. You know, we've got Kyle, and we've got his wife, Sharon, in Montana. They've risen to the occasion. We've got Ed in Florida has risen to the occasion years ago. And there are so many others. I apologize for not mentioning all of those who.
Norm, Rick. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on and on and on. The point of the story is everybody. It's about me, I. You know, people don't get it. Whether you're on the air or not, even if you're on the air and this bubble breaks, you're not on the air anymore. If a solar flare comes and the grid goes down, you're not on the air anymore. You know, how many times Matt Stein's talked about it, and Rick's talked about it. And, you know, when people ask for help, they ask for help today. When you ask for help, or I encourage you to ask for help to come up with an idea, we're asking for help today. Not when you decide you want to help, because when you decide it may be too late. It's like you checking the hood on your car. What would have happened if you had to stop on the side of the road on that 100-mile trip, round trip, and you couldn't get the hood open? What were you going to research to find out, how I'm going to open the hood, where you didn't have any tools? That's what your show is all about, trying to prepare, trying to look a little bit into the future, or think outside of the box to figure what it is you might need for that rainy day. And it's going to be I've got family, you've got family, we've got friends. They don't even have a clue what time of day it is. Not to say that I do or you do, but at least when you look at all of the information that's out there, when you hear the nonsense going on in the political arena, how much more scared should it be? I mean, when you hear there's 300,000 UN troops on the Russian border and another large group being put together, that's only on one side of the fence. What do you think that means? And when you hear the media not talking about that, what does that mean? Does that mean, oh my? When you hear India is now having cash shortages because they're taking the people out of the cash and going to a digital, and gold is doubling in price, but only in India, apparently not in the rest of the world. What does that mean? When is it that you wake up? When do you realize that's not a sandwich in your mouth, that's a dirty sock in your mouth? What is that? When did you connect the dots? And is it a little too late at that point in time? You know, you think about greed, selfishness, and stupidity, because they all run hand in hand. And you've always been generous with your time. And you always try to share an idea when you can. Nobody realizes how much pressure it is for you to even put a show on, let alone an expo. You know, Oh, my, I got to drive 10 hours to get to the expo. That's pressure. You've been preparing for months before the expo. Or when you're calling people the night before to go over the show for the next day. That's all your time. That time you could be taking a nap. You could be fixing something that broke that you didn't even know broke. I mean, those are all fair scenarios, correct?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, you and I were on the phone, and I said, a couple days ago, I said, Joey, I've got to run because I've got to fix the
well.
the water. Yeah, the well problem that we have. Yeah. Yep.
And nobody knows this is a 24/7 around-the-clock job being alive. And it's easy to be alive when you have every kind of luxury you can think of. You can get on the internet and look on YouTube how to fix a washing machine, how to do this, how to do that. What are you going to do? I shared with you, I used to weld years ago. I started welding again. Oh, what a beautiful bead. The first thing that happened was I broke the weld because I forgot. It's not about the beauty of the bead, it's about the penetration of the bead. What do you do if that was your last little bit of energy to make that weld bead and you failed? People are about to experience something they may always wish they prepared a little better for. And what is preparing? If you don't prepare the number one thing, the number two thing, the number three thing, health, health, health. I've been on the minerals. I've been on the supplements. I've been trying to create a better pH balance and not an acidic balance in my system. I didn't know if you're acidic body, you can't absorb minerals and vitamins. I mean, everybody talks about everything, but connect those dots. It's amazing how when you wake up in the morning in a nice warm house and you're going to get to take a hot shower and a good hot cup of coffee or 3 or 4 of them, what do you do when you wake up in a barn or on a slab or where there's no heat in your house and it's no longer hot? You can't take a hot shower and you haven't washed for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. How different is your attitude going to be? How generous are you going to be? And when your neighbor comes to your house that he went and bought a brand new Corvette or a brand new used Corvette, and you've been doing without driving an old truck that you're baling together with bale twine and Bondo to keep it on the road so you can prepare, and then he wants you to share, or your family, they want you to share. And you've been doing without in anticipation of a doom and gloom day. Well, how generous do you want to be at that time? And especially when they bring nothing to the table. They have no skills, they have no knowledge, and they're just plain ignorant and lazy. How are you going to feel that day? How are you going to make that decision? Better yet, when you haven't eaten for 2 or 3 days and they come, because now you see you're down to the wire and you've got X amount of food till spring or a better condition. How's that going to work? Nobody realizes how quick a day changes.
All that has to happen, Joey, is one person in the family gets sick. Just one. Let's say there are 4 of you. Let's say there are 3 of you. One person gets sick, and what a difference a day makes. Now it's all hands on deck trying to keep that person alive and restore health. It's a huge problem. And, we have young people in families, and we're trying to educate them, trying to teach them what they need to know. And then we have the middle-aged people in the family that are carrying most of the load, doing the things that need to be done to survive economically and to provide food, clothing, and shelter. And then you have the older people in the family who have already done their share, and you need to protect and defend and take care of them. That's just the way it is. But when the young or the old get sick, it can really, really destroy the momentum that the family had. And if the middle-aged people get sick, the ones that are carrying the heavy part of the load, now you have a huge problem. Huge problem. You're absolutely right, Joey.
The young people don't even have a clue that there could be a problem, because most young people don't know why you celebrate 4th of July. They don't know who Mao is. They don't know who Lenin or Trotsky or Stalin were. They have no clue. The only thing they teach you is what they want you to know. And the dumber and dumber people get, the less chance anybody has of waking up on the other side of the river. You know, a guy told me once, I says, what? He says, think about crossing a river with rapids. Hope that you're over half of the way through the river, so if you black out or you hit your head on a rock, you float to shore on the other side. And that's really, when it comes down to it, you know, you think about the people in Europe when they went through the tragedy of World War II or World War I. A lot of them people still haven't forgotten. But here, the only thing I always say we're the best at, we create debt and we create ill health. And from that point, it's a no-win way.
Yeah.
When you start out under the bus, yep.
From those two perspectives, we're number one. debt and poor health. Joey, you know, it's a lot of fun chatting with you, and we're going to chat one more segment with Joey. We'll be right back. So, Joey, you know, toward the end of the hay season, and just as we go into the cold weather, we change the oil on our tractors, you know, if they need it. And so my son and I were changing the oil on our backhoe. We have a case backhoe that we use here on the farm. And so we put on some wrenches, metric, no, all those were loose. Put on some US SAE wrenches. No, all those were loose. So I looked really carefully, you know, got under there, and I noticed that it looked like the last guy that had owned this backhoe when they changed the oil used a pipe wrench to take out the drain plug and kind of boogered up the drain plug, the hex head on the drain plug. So it wouldn't accept a wrench regardless of the size. So got a special tool out that we have to remove stripped bolt heads and stripped nuts, and got it out, and there was no drain plug washer on there. You know, one of those copper washers that keep the drain plug from leaking. The reason it was so hard to get off was the guy just, well, he didn't have the drain plug, or lost it and decided that we don't need that, and just tightened it really, really tightly and kept it from leaking. But I don't want to do that. I want to fix it right. So that's a 40-mile round trip. And what I'm saying is, this is just one more example of carelessness. And literally, it's everywhere I look. Whenever I'm working on something that someone else has worked on, I see shortcuts, and carelessness. And I can't stand it. And I think back to my dad. My dad saying, hey, Vinny, I can't stand watching you do your taxes. Why don't you have a professional do it? Why don't you have a plumber do the plumbing? Why don't you have an electrician do? I know a guy. Really, Dad? Really? You think they're going to do a better job than I would do? Really? Joey, don't you see it?
It's just not doing it. It's the 3 hours to go 40 miles, because it's 40 miles, 45 minutes to an hour each way. Then you're going to be in the parts counter explaining to the intellectual genius that's going to tell you the part and tell you why or what. And then somehow you get lost in transition. So throw in, so that's 4 hours. And that's 4 hours of your day. And then you're going to still do this show. And then, you know, people are going to be people. You know, it's like, what do you say? It's 9 meals away from anarchy.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever seen a mess like what's in Venezuela right now.
Wow.
What would they think? What will they think? And it's a funny thing, because the one thing we've learned from this whole conversation today, it's all about me. I, me. And the bottom line is, when it comes down to whether you prepared or you didn't prepare, and I guarantee you the guy that prepared is going to be more generous than the guy that didn't prepare, because he already had something outside of the box. He was thinking outside of the box. He was thinking with his heart. He was thinking with his intuition. He was thinking way outside of the curve. And these other parasites, we're going to call them, these deadbeats that just go from day to day mumbling, like in a zombie apocalypse movie, whatever that goofy thing is. I don't even know what they call it. The point of my story is, he never sacrificed anything. He's at the front counter. He's like the person that goes and buys the mocha latte for $6 when you're paying for it, and you buy the cheapest coffee on the block because you just want something warm and something cheap, and you don't need a $6 drink. to pacify because you're special and you earned it and you deserve it. What are these people thinking? What are they going to do? And how are you going to be different? It's going to alter our character when we have to defend what we normally would have shared, because it goes back to when you go to a party and extra people come and everybody takes what they want in front of you and throws most of it away. But if everybody took a little bit, everybody would have gotten a sampler. And I think about that all the time, because how many times I've been to a party and extra people came and there wasn't enough food. So you don't even want no food. Are we done? I guess we are.
Joey, it brings to mind the point, like when you and I are with a group of people, we're at a convention or something, and then we all go out to eat, and there's a bunch of us. I always say to the waitress, separate checks, please. And the reason is, I'm not going to buy the most expensive meal, and I don't want to divide whatever it is that everyone else enjoyed. That was really, really expensive when I sacrificed. I don't want to do that. So I just want to pay for me. And you're the same way.
So, Vince, thank you for pulling us all together through the expos, through the shows, and hopefully other people will step up.
Hey, thanks so much. Joey from Michigan.
Be safe, Vince.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Harry Cooper's with us. SharkHunters.com. Welcome, Harry.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Harry. You and I met many, many years ago at a military antiques extravaganza show.
Yeah,
And,
right. That must have been about 20 years ago, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and those were great days. And I remember meeting a man who was on the Bismarck. He was a machinist on the Bismarck.
Oh, Rudy. Yeah, Rudy.
And he was incredible.
Yeah, these
he was
guys
telling
had so much history locked up in them.
Yeah. And, imagine class meeting someone who was on the Bismarck, or someone who was the flight crew that was in the bombing of Nagasaki, Japan. And I'm sure you met some of the crew as well.
Yeah, the bombardier on Boxcar was a member of Shark Hunters until his death.
You're talking about William Jeppers?
No, not the bombardier, the navigator. I can't even remember the man's name, but he lived in Chicago. I remember that because that was my old hometown. I didn't meet quite so many of the flyboys, but the U-boat guys, Otto Kretschmer, the top submarine commander of the war, was a good friend of mine. I had a sleeping room in his house. Erich Tupp, I've been in and out of his house. I don't know how many times he was over to visit us here. Hans-Georg Hess, the youngest combat submarine commander, just passed his 21st birthday. They gave him command of a combat submarine and told him, go on out and die for your country. And fortunately, he was 5 successful patrols at a time when U-boats weren't coming back from their first war patrol, and he got the Knight's Cross, etc. So many, I met so many of them. They were all members of Shark Hunters, and that's where we got the bulk of our history. As you know, we publish a magazine on that online, and these new Johnny-come-lately websites, all they can do is take stats out of books that are rather sterile and not always accurate. And our history comes right from the guys who were there. The German U-boat guys, we had probably close to 1,000 U-boat crewmen and skippers. They're all gone now except for a handful. A lot of American submarine guys, the 4 Medal of Honor winning submarine commanders on the American side were all members. And Admiral Fluckey, the most highly decorated American submariner ever, was a guest in my home. Had the Medal of Honor, 4 Navy Crosses, etc. So we get the history right from the guy who was there, and in many cases from the woman who was there. We've got 16 books in print already, most on the U-boats. 2 more books coming out as soon as my secretary finishes uploading them to the publisher's house, which she's doing right now today. And our best-selling book, and it's really a big-selling bestseller, is called Hitler in Argentina. As you know, we're the first guys that came out with that, almost 2 decades ago in an earlier book. Then we came out with Hitler in Argentina, which is all the hardcore facts, proof, etc., with copies of files, photos, letters back and forth, etc. And it came out and was selling very well. And along come a book 2 years later called Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler, which I have not read, but members have told me there are certain passages that read exactly like passages in my book, and they're using that for this Hunting Hitler TV show. Bless their heart.
Hey, so I have not seen this Hunting Hitler show at all. What can you tell us about it?
From what I've been told, I haven't seen it either, but the factual stuff, which they either lifted from my book or got from a fellow named Abel Basti in South America, who, in my opinion, is probably the number one best researcher of the Third Reich in Argentina. But he has only one side of the story, which is like clapping with one hand. And I know Abel. I've been a guest in his house. We've had dinner together when I was down there the first time. He is... He bought the story. Germans were all Nazis. Hitler was a horrible man. They murdered and massacred people all over the place, and Nazi this, war criminal that, etc., etc. So it's a little bit slanted, and that's not good for a historian. You know, was Hitler a good guy or a bad guy? That's not for a historian to say. That's for a sociologist to say, not for a historian. A historian gets facts, hardcore facts, leaves opinions out. But anyhow, the guys that did this Hunting Hitler really ripped him off, Abel, and he filed an international lawsuit against the authors of the book. But the guy lives in Argentina. The author is a Brit who lives in France. How you gonna sue somebody like that? So they can do, anybody can do anything they want, steal from anybody, as long as there's a lot of space in between them. Like I say, Basti is from Argentina. Williams is a Brit living in France. You're never going to get it done. Mm-hmm. But factually, like I say, most of the stuff is right. Some of it is not correct. They show that Hitler escaped on a submarine. Absolutely false. Hitler got seasick even when he was on the deck of the big state yacht Aviso Gorilla, which was like 200 meters long, tied to the dock. He got seasick. So to think he was going to spend a month or so in a dark, smelly, closed-in submarine, no. We know how he got out. That's in our second book, Hitler and the Secret Alliance. He escaped in the only Ju-390 left in existence. That was a big 6-engine transport, which was nicknamed the Truck, and it had the range to make it all the way to Argentina or to South America without refueling. And we had heard that it landed on a ranch in Uruguay. So I was just down there this past February. I spent a month in South America. We were at that ranch. We saw where the plane landed. We talked to some really old people, mostly women. I guess the guys die early down there, but we talked to a lot of really old women, and they all heard the plane land. They all identified the time, which was about 2 a.m, and the date, etc. And one lady had her arms on the table. We were sitting around the table, and she was leaning forward and talking to us. And she didn't know anything about no Nazis down there. She didn't know nothing about Nazis. And then my guide motioning me with his eyes, and I looked at her forearm. She had 3 swastikas tattooed on her forearm, but she didn't know nothing about no Nazis. Your listeners can see all these photos. Just go to sharkhunters.com and then select tours from the drop-down menus, and every place we've ever gone is represented there with tons of photos. So that part we know is correct, and I'm going back this February because we finally found a lady. She's 97 now. She actually saw the plane land. So I'm going back to talk to her, plus there's other things I'm going to be doing in February, looking down there, which if your listeners would like more information, they can just send me an email, sharkhunters@earthlink.net, and just say they heard us on your show, and I'll send them the current issue of the magazine electronically and let them know when I'm going down again and what we're finding and keep them up to date on the news. A couple of things we did mention about that hunting Hitler. First, they had a guy, they went to the estate where Hitler lived from 1945 to 1955. That's on the shore of a beautiful, huge, big lake, Lake Nahuelhuapi. And, they made such a big sensational splash about this. They had some guy dressed in a frogman outfit, and they come buzzing by at about 20 knots in a Zodiac. This was going to be a subtle, sneaky insertion. They come roaring by at 20 knots. This guy drops over the side, swims quietly up to the beach, and goes and looks at the house. Well, when I went there in 2008, also again in 2009, we just rented a cabin cruiser, drove it right up on the sand, got out of the boat, and walked up to the house. Nobody's lived in it since Hitler and Eva Braun left in 1955. So that part is a lot of sensational baloney. Then, last year on their show, they made this big splash, big discovery. They found the ruins of Hitler's house. They found it. First time anybody ever found it. That was a year ago. So we went there, my guide and I. It's a state park, for God's sake. It's been open to the public since 1995. So how did they just discover it? People have been discovering it every day since 1995. So we went along the path, and there were the ruins of the house. It was not Hitler's house. And down there they have it listed as Bormann's house. But it was not Bormann's house either. Bormann was in charge of it, I'm sure. But it was a safe house. Now this is in a...
Hold that thought. Harry Cooper, hold that thought. We're going into a commercial break. We'll be right back. Harry Cooper's with us, sharkhunters.com. And if you'd like to contact Harry Cooper, sharkhunters@earthlink.net. And you'll get a free issue of the magazine, sharkhunters@earthlink.net. Harry, when I was in elementary school, I was taught by my instructor that Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide. Their bodies were then brought up from the bunker, doused with gasoline, and burned. And I always wondered, really? Would he really do that? Would he do that to his lady? Would he really do that? And I've doubted it, from elementary school. And of course, I don't believe it.
We were all taught that. They're taught that in just about every school in every country of the world. Hitler was a horrible man, killed 6 million Jews, committed suicide. He and Eva Braun committed suicide. Their bodies were burned in the courtyard, and but where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? We went back through the files. Joseph Stalin told Truman at the, Yalta? No, not Yalta, the Potsdam. He told Truman at the Potsdam conference, which was after the end of the war, he told him that Hitler got away. We list all sorts of people on my website under books, people who have testified Hitler did not commit suicide. Marshal Zhukov was in command of the Russian army that took Berlin, and he had a special squad tasked to find Hitler's body. And after a week and a half, 2 weeks, they had to go to Stalin and say, he ain't here. And he wasn't. He was not there after the 23rd of April. He had his birthday party there on the 20th. Admiral Dönitz was there, and various other high-ranking officers were there. And up to the 23rd, Hitler himself had signed all the major orders. After that, Hitler's signature did not appear on anything. It was all Martin Bormann who signed all the orders. And so it's just necessary for certain people in the world, certain factions in the world, to have Hitler neatly dead. But he wasn't. We have photos of him having dinner with the Eichhorn family in the little town of Miramar. La Falda, I'm sorry. In Cordova province, the Eichhorn family owned the Eden Hotel, and they supported Hitler all through his early days in politics, sent him money, especially the wife, Ida Eichhorn. And I've been in that hotel a couple of times. They even have several FBI files in plastic protective things that you can read, that the FBI flat out said they thought Hitler escaped and was being protected by the Eichhorn family. Eichhorn is the German word for acorn. So this, in 1947, 2 years after he allegedly committed suicide, there are three witnesses to the suicide. Gunsche, his adjutant, Kempke, his motor pool driver, and Linge, his valet. They all saw the suicide. Well, then under interrogation, no, they didn't actually see anything. Two of them heard a gunshot. One of them just smelled the powder residue from when the gun was fired. But the time they heard and smelled the powder varied by 2 or 3 hours, each guy. Then they testified that they ran into Hitler's quarters. Two of them said Hitler was slumped over at one end of the sofa. Eva Braun was slumped over at the other end of the sofa, and her dress was wet because when Hitler shot himself, he apparently knocked over a flower vase that got her wet. But the third guy said Hitler was sitting on a chair on the other side of the room, and Eva Braun was laying on the sofa. Now, how do you make that kind of a mistake? Or was it deliberate so that the SS could leave clues that people could find later on?
We'll be right back. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Class, Harry Cooper is with us, sharkhunters.com. I have a copy that I just pulled off my bookshelf, Hitler in Argentina, The Documented Truth of Hitler's Escape from Berlin. It's written by Harry Cooper. Harry, if anyone in our class would like to buy a copy of this book and maybe present it as a gift to someone who might want to learn more about history, can they get an autographed copy from you the way I have?
Yeah, they certainly can. Just email us, sharkhunters@earthlink.net, and order the book. It's $25 plus how much is shipping? $7 plus $7 shipping in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And they can either email or call us Our phone number's right on our website, too, so they don't have to rush for a paper and pencil. And just we need the name, address, telephone number, Visa or MasterCard, the number, the expiration date, and the 3-digit number on the back of the card. We keep these in stock. We'll autograph them and get them out within 2 or 3 days of getting the order.
Great.
And it's selling like mad, thank God. We've sold over 10,000 copies of this book, and we're still selling, and people still love the book because it is absolutely on the button.
Mm-hmm. Harry, you haven't changed. You haven't changed a bit since all the years that I've known you, and the story. Well, history hasn't changed. You've been saying the same exact thing, and I really appreciate that. Well, can you let our class know what your thoughts are on? Okay, so some bodies were burned. Do we have any idea who they were? Yeah,
the guy we are pretty sure was a guy named Joseph Silip. Silip. He was a cousin of Hitler's, came from the same section of Austria that Hitler did and spoke with the same unique Austrian dialect. The SS found him in 1944, brought him to Berlin, trained him in Hitler's mannerisms, etc. If you look at the picture of Hitler patting the young kid on the face there in the last days of the war.
Yeah.
That wasn't Hitler. That was Silip.
Mm-hmm.
You look at that photo, and you look at photos of the guy you know was Hitler from earlier, and the ears are different, the cheekbones are different. And But where's the body? Hitler and Stalin hated each other. If Stalin had Hitler's body, even a scrap of it, it would be on display in the Kremlin. Stalin would be using Hitler's skull for an ashtray. He just didn't have it. And the piece of the skull they had there in the Red Army Museum, which I saw when I was there way back when it was still the Soviet Union, about 10, 12 years ago, some independent forensic pathologist checked that out. And he had no axe to grind one way or another, and he found that was the skull of a young woman in her 20s. So no matter what you think of Hitler, he was not a cross-dresser. He didn't use the other guy's bathroom, and it wasn't Eva Braun. So where's the body? If they had the body, it would be on display in the Kremlin, even if it was cremated, toasted, and burned to hell. They would have had it on display. They don't have the body because he wasn't dead there. He died in 1963. As of the year 2002, we are pretty certain that Eva Braun was still alive in 2002, which is no big deal because she was born 1912. That would make her 90 years old. My own grandmother was 90 when she passed away. Captain Hardigan, the skipper of the U-boat that sank the first ship in American waters, if he makes it until this coming March, he'll be 104. So 90 years old in this day and age is not such a big deal. So back to the so-called Hitler's house that these guys allegedly discovered, horse feathers. There's a long, skinny finger of Argentina that sticks up between Paraguay to the west and Brazil to the east. It's called TBA, Tri-Border Area. And from the ruins of this house, which we believe was a safe house, you can literally see across the river to Paraguay. And 10 clicks or so to the east was Brazil. And this was used at a time in around 1958 when Perón was kicked out of power. Perón was their guardian angel. Martin Bormann brought lots and lots of money, billions of dollars. And 1945, Perón was a colonel with no money, no property. 1946, he was still a colonel, but he was president of Argentina, had a ton of money, had all sorts of property. And so he was propping up and protecting the Germans that were there. One or two exceptions, like Eichmann, for instance, who was not very high on the food chain. He didn't have much money. He worked long, hard hours, And so he had no protection. The Mossad got him easily. But the big guys like Bormann, Hitler, Eva Braun, et cetera, they were protected. So, and one thing that really bugs me about this group that made the hunting Hitler thing, they looked around, they beeped around, I guess, with metal detectors and found Third Reich coins on the ground by this, the ruins of this house, and they found medicine bottles, so they deduced that this definitely was where Hitler was. The park rangers told us that the film crew brought all those coins and bottles and scattered them around so they could be found on camera, which is just the lowest form of baloney. So,
well, I can tell you that if you come to the studio, Harry, I've got some of those Third Reich coins right here, right in the studio. So
right. Well, if you scatter them around outside your farmhouse and film it, then you can prove that Hitler lived in your farmhouse. Just like these guys were proving that he lived in that house, which he did not. So, yeah, there's a lot of those. We've got a lot of the coins and also the paper money here as well. But to scatter something around, they call that salting a mine, back in the old days of the Wild West.
Sure.
And that's just wrong. That's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it is. I lived in a small town in Virginia, and there's a lot of quartz in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the town fathers salted a little bit of gold, just a little bit, and they created a gold rush for a few days. Until it was found out that it was all a hoax. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's just the lowest form of yellow rag journalism to deliberately lie about something and to sensationalize it with fake stuff. So that was a safe house. Because after Bormann got knocked out of power, the guys were scattering every which way. There were so many guys who were there that were not wanted, but who didn't want to come to the U.S. in Operation Paperclip or go to Russia, like Professor Kurt Tank, the guy who designed the Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter plane. He and 50 other aeronautical engineers went to Argentina. And they were designing planes for the Argentine Air Force and various others. When I was there this past February, we were in a little town in Uruguay. And we talked to this car mechanic. Oh, he had a friend whose grandfather was in the Luftwaffe. Okay, so he introduced us. And this kid, he was about 40 years old, big, tall, blue-eyed, blonde guy, spoke Spanish, of course, also spoke German very well, spoke English perfectly. And he's telling us about his grandfather practicing with gliders, and then he decided he didn't want to be a pilot, etc. And his grandfather's name was Reimer Horten. Holy cow, if you know anything about German weaponry, the Horten brothers designed and built the first jet-powered flying wing bomber. And that was this kid's grandfather. Oh, and by the way, he says, my father is here too. Would you like to talk to him? He put us in contact with Horten's son, and we're still in contact with them. Horten was designing flying wing aircraft for the Argentine Air Force. So these guys didn't just die. The Third Reich did not evaporate, didn't die. It merely moved. And I have been in little towns down there where they still greet each other with the right arm in the air, and they still speak German in these little towns. I can get along there because I can speak German. I can't speak Spanish to save my life, but I can get along fine in German down there. There are so many historic places, historic to the Third Reich, and they're all on my website, sharkhunters.com. Then click on tours. Make sure you got plenty of potato chips and Coke, because it'll just suck you right in. I've been on the secret island, 1,000 kilometers off of Rio de Janeiro, where they'd stop for replenishment on the way down there, and that is a property of Brazil, but they pulled their people off, and Germans came and were on this island at least until 1947, 2 years after the war, to provide fresh water, because there's creeks and streams all over that island. I was there, spent a few days there as guest of the Brazil Navy. Wonderful people. And also they had pigs, herds of goats. So if a boat or ship or whatever would come in on their way down to Argentina, they'd just whack a bunch of goats or pigs and pour some water, and they were set for the rest of the trip going on. And tens of thousands made it to Argentina, not only Germans, but Croatians, Italians, etc. And, they all adopted other names. And as you know, you had been getting my magazine, and we were telling all that story. Both of our Hitler escape books, Hitler in Argentina and also Hitler and the Secret Alliance. It lists all the guys who went down, all the important ones who went there. Also, all the people down in Argentina who helped them. There was a huge, big German contingent down there prior to the war. And
Harry Cooper's with us. Harry, we're going to continue right after this break. Tom in Baltimore, please stay with us on the line, and you're up as soon as we get back from these few short commercial announcements. There's some arcade gun shows coming up, and there's the Arcade Prepper Show in Indianapolis. I will not be there to speak. Class, very quick update. Gun shows this weekend, arcade gun shows, arcadeshows.com. December 3rd and 4th, Ashland, Kentucky, Atlanta, Georgia, Springfield, Missouri, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's this weekend. And also, Indianapolis, Indiana, the Arcade Prepper Show. That's December 3 and 4. What a great show that is. I won't be able to leave the farm this weekend to be there. I was scheduled to speak. I will not be able to do that, but and we confirmed that with RK this morning, let them know that unfortunately I cannot leave the farm as originally scheduled. So I thought this might happen. So I'm sorry. I just can't do it this time, but in a future date I may be able to do that. Harry Cooper's with us. Tom in Baltimore, welcome.
Hi, Vincent. Let me start out by wishing you a belated happy Thanksgiving. I hope it was restful and peaceful down the farm for you and your family.
Well, thank you.
Okay, I
think
you hear me.
And,
certainly. I always enjoy your show. Thank you for taking my call late in it. I didn't tune in until later, so I'm going to abbreviate what I think I can contribute to the conversation. Let me say, I hope you have this guy back on again. I think what he's talking about is a subject worth looking into that might be helpful in many different ways. Here's what I know about this subject. There were a number of families, quite a few, from the Confederacy who relocated to that very same area. I've got a lot of information on that. However, I first became interested in questioning what we accept commonly in regard to Nazi Germany during my career in law enforcement, when I was vacillating for some time on being pro or anti-death penalty, ended up on the side of being against it. And I wanted to write a paper. I was going to write an amicus brief ultimately, and my research led me to a very strange guy who was a scientific engineer of sorts, and he was interested in finding a more humane way to execute people. He was pro-death penalty, and he ended up in Germany figuring who better to find out a great way to kill people than from people in Germany who would have history on Nazi Germany. Well, he was stymied at every step. I thought that was very odd. Then I found out that in these modern times, there are laws against even questioning what was going on during that period of time. Again, that's a big red flag for me, and I'll leave you with this last comment. My grandmother immigrated from Czechoslovakia, her family and her, and when she was here, they never spoke of any concern or fear of Hitler and Nazi Germany. Their big fear in Czechoslovakia was the Soviet Union. And from what I could gather, and I wish she was still around so I could question her more, it seemed as though they felt protected from the Soviet Union by Germany. And take that for what it's worth, but I'll leave you with that because I know we're at the end of the hour. I hope you have this guy back on again so I can call back and we can have some questions back and forth.
Oh, you bet. You bet. And what our class is learning is that the instructors who are on the air with me are people I know. These are friends. These are people I like. These are people I trust. These are people that, I think their opinion and their information should be shared far and wide. And that's who Harry Cooper is. So, Tom, I really appreciate that. Harry, do you have any comments?
Oh, absolutely. Tom is absolutely correct. First off, Tom, if you have any other questions, send me an email, sharkhunters@earthlink.net.
Okay.
He's absolutely correct. In Germany, it's a felony. We've known this for quite a while. It's a felony to deny the Holocaust. Ask David Irving. Ask some of the other guys that have wound up in prison because they denied it. Then they passed the law. It's a felony to even question the Holocaust. And now they've made it against the law to criticize the German government. So, as Tom says, when you want to find out what you're not supposed to know, find out, what's against the law. And
what about putting your right arm up at a 45-degree angle?
Oh, boy.
Isn't that against the law as well?
You betcha it is. And when I take history groups over there, I tell them, don't do it because there's police everywhere. If you get caught because you're an American, they probably won't throw you in prison. They'll throw you right out of the country after they lift, supposedly, I think it's 2,500 euros, which is almost 3,000 Yankee dollars. They'll kick you out.